Hello everyone. Update day has come again, and I have news on the progress of the new map. The majority of the work on the map is done. There's some essential things missing, however, so I'm not releasing it this week, although it's just about ready. The apartments are looking good, Precinct 13 is looking good, and so are the connections to a lot of the older things in the map. But before I'm ready to show that off, I'm going to tide you over with one last collection of things that I've added this week. In addition to some bug fixes, of course, I've added a handful of items to tide you over until the map is ready to be released. Even though the majority of the work that I'm doing this week is on the map, I don't like leaving you guys empty-handed. And so, 3 new weapons have been added this week. Now, weapons are not something that I add very lightly, and I wanted to make sure that these felt quite significant. One of them is pretty familiar to a lot of us. That's the axe, a wood-cutting axe, more specifically. While the appearance and the animations of this wood-cutting axe are familiar to a lot of us, the sounds and the handling of it, in addition to its performance, I think is going to be more in line with what you would expect from what you've already seen so far on Roots. It should fit right in alongside the pipe and the crowbar that we already have. But that's not all, of course. There's 2 more to address, 2 which are rather unique, I'd say, in their appearance and their usage. The meat cleaver, which can be found in shop boxes, and in the future would be something you would find in an old kitchen or something along those lines, is now a melee weapon that you can use. It's not just a tool for cutting up meat, it's a tool for cutting up meat that can also cut up living meat. You also wield it in a very unique way. You look kind of crazed with this rusty, bloody blade hanging above your head. It's the classic animation, but I think it fits quite well for this weapon specifically. And lastly, the 3rd melee weapon that I added this week was the shovel. The shovel is quite interesting because it has, like the cleaver, different handling than you're used to. I suggest getting a feel for it and seeing how it differs from the other weapons. While some weapons are very close to one another, nearly identical in function, so that you can pick one over another more for its appearance than its stats, there are some weapons which operate quite differently from others, and you might choose them depending on the situation you're going into. Some are faster, but a little bit shorter range. Some are longer range, but maybe a bit more unwieldy, and so you swing them more slowly. Whatever the situation is, you can try to pick the right weapon for the task. Some of these might even have auxiliary functions in the future. For example, a shovel maybe is used in some way to dig into something or interact with plants or soil in some kind of meaningful way, other than just being a weapon. The meat cleaver as well. Perhaps in the future, when you're harvesting meat and preparing it to cook, you actually use the cleaver in order to do so. It's just an idea, of course, but I think it would be interesting to give these items multiple functions, other than just being a skin for a melee weapon. But weapons aren't the only thing that I added this week. Something else, related to food, actually. Preserved food, more specifically. Now, rarely while you're scavenging, and also in the shop boxes, you can find a tin can. It's sealed tight, and has been for probably about 20 years now, however long it's been since before the Combine invaded. This food might be old, but it's still food, and it's packed with nutrients. It's not top tier, but it's better than your rations. That's right, this is C-grade food, but you're actually able to store it, of course, because it's canned, it's preserved food, and so it doesn't abide by the same rules that a slice of pizza or a loaf of bread might. But it's also not quite that simple, because it's a can of food, and you can't just chew on it and get the food out. You have to have some means, a proper tool. I'll let you imagine what that tool would be, and if you can get your hands on one, then there you go. A nice can of preserved food. Oh, and by the way, it's quite filling. As mentioned, obviously there was a lot of bug fixes, and most of those aren't worth mentioning, although I will mention one fix that I know a lot of you have been asking for a long time. Finally, I've made it so that the scanner parts actually despawn. In fact, all Gibs automatically despawn, so whatever stuff was going to pile up over time, be it from barnacles or scanners, manhacks, you name it, no longer is going to create piles of laggy clutter all over the ground that no one can seem to get rid of. I'd say that about wraps it up for this week's update to Roots. As with the past few weeks, I've mostly been working on the map, and hopefully, I think I should be able to get something presentable by the end of next week, as it is technically in a somewhat usable state right now. I just need to pretty up a few last things and add some of the missing functionality before it's good to go.